Good morning, Garland Nixon and Scott Ritter here. We got lots of things going on the front line in Ukraine and the back line in Ukraine too, for that matter. We've got the Iraqis are unhappy with being bombed. Imagine that. And of course, Tucker Carlson's interviewed Vladimir Putin. Let's talk. Hello, Garland here, and we're talking with Scott Ritter. It's Thursday morning at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, which is our new time for our show, Warrior Update. Lots of going on. Let's start in Ukraine because before we get to the palace intrigue, as everybody is referring it to, or I think it's more like the bunker intrigue. Let's talk about what's happening on the front lines. Avdeevka seems to be have a cauldron forming around it, and I got to say something I've noticed. The reference to the Russian style of confronting your enemy as a cauldron was traditionally viewed as a full encirclement. What I've noticed repeatedly now in this conflict is they do a partial encirclement and just allow Ukraine to keep coming in and out, and they bomb them and they hit them with artillery, and they just continue to let them come in and out as long as they want to and continue to hit them as they come and go. But Avdeevka, what's going on there, and what is the significance of that? We've heard Bakhmut. This is a big deal. How big a deal is Avdeevka, Scott Ritter?
Well, it's a huge deal. This has been the centerpiece of Ukraine's positioning in the Donbass. It's been heavily fortified since 2014. We're talking about reinforced concrete structures, bunkers. We're talking about strong points. It was basically designed to be impregnable and give them this this fortified position close to the city of Donetsk that would forever destabilize, harass, serve as a base from which they can bombard Donetsk, etc. Well, it's over. Battle's over. I mean, there's fighting left. There's a lot of people left to die, but the outcome has been decided. The defenses have collapsed. The Ukrainians have nothing left. They have no artillery support. They have no armor. They have no air force. And upwards of 30,000.
Other than that, they're looking good, Scott.
Other than that, they're looking pretty good. They have around 30,000 guys. Now, normally in a cauldron, you're right. And normally in a situation, the Russians, as they did in Bakhmut and elsewhere, they create a situation where you have a single line of communication connecting, and they give the Ukrainians the option to either leave or reinforce. It's up to the Ukrainians. And if they reinforce, they'll make them pay the price coming in, and then they destroy them, and then they make them continue to reinforce, etc. I think at this juncture, that's out the window. Now we're into a Mariupol type situation where now that the battle is decided, why let 30,000 troops leave and only to fall back, get rearmed, re-equipped, and thrown back into the battle? This is a chance to take 30,000 troops off the board. And I think the Russians are going to be doing that. They're going to either kill them or capture them. But, these Ukrainians are going to, in one way or the other, the war's ending for them very soon. And you remove 30,000 troops. Remember, right now, the Ukrainian president said he's got about 880,000 men under arms. And that sounds like a lot. It's about what they've had this entire war. I always said they started the conflict with around 700, 800,000 men. People are, that's too many. I'm like, no, add them all up. That's what you get. But they've been losing, 500,000 have gone. So that means that, they've let's say they started with 700,000. They've lost 500,000. That's 200,000, well-trained soldiers. They've brought in another 680,000 of variations of preparation, but they've got nothing left. Right now, the Ukrainians are desperate to get 500,000 more to come in and fill the gaps, plug the gaps. Why? Because they're losing 20, 30, 40, 50, 60,000 men a month, and there's nobody replacing them. Meanwhile, the Russians are gaining 1,500 men a day. So we're talking about between 30 and 40,000 men a month. The Russians are gaining, and they're not suffering the kind of casualties the Ukrainians are suffering. When I was in the new territories in the Donbass region, the military commanders were saying, "Look, we were back in October losing casualties about a 1 to 7 rate, meaning for every Russian dead, 7 Ukrainians are dying." He said, "We got that up to about 1 to 10." He says, "Now it's 1 to 20." And right now in the battle of Avdeevka, I imagine it's getting up around 1 to 30. This is an absolute slaughter. It's unimaginable what's going on. And the Ukrainians don't have anybody to replace these people. So when this strong point falls, as it is doing right now, there's no strong point behind it. There's no anchor, and there's no men. Yes, the Ukrainians are digging trenches. They're laying out they're dragon's teeth into barbed wire, and they're laying minefields, but there's no defense in depth. This is an act of desperation. And what's going to happen is, as the Russians push through, the Ukrainians, they just lost 30,000 men. Now, if they had been smart, they would have pulled those 30,000 out and positioned them in a layered defense to delay the Russians. Those 30,000 are gone. Now they need to get 30,000 more. Where from? They don't have any more troops. They have no more reserves. So they're going to pull them from other parts of the front to fill this gap, fill this hole, which means that those parts are going to be weakened. The Russians and if you look along the front, the Russians are advancing everywhere. 500 meters, a kilometer, 5 kilometers. They're just biting off the chunks. And we are at the point, we've been talking about this all along, Garland, the total collapse. And that's what we're on the verge of. Total collapse. If people want a historical precedence, look up the Battle for Army Group Center in 1944. Army Group Center was the big German army group right there in the middle of Russia. Huge number of troops laid out in defensive positions, and the Russians attacked. And the attack, the Germans fought, and Russians lost a lot of guys. But eventually what happened is, such big frontage, they didn't have enough troops, and the holes opened up. And once the Russians pushed through, got into the rear, the whole front collapsed. The Germans were just running to get away, and they were slaughtered. They lost hundreds of thousands, if not millions of men in this battle. That's where we're approaching right now. The Ukrainians have been doing let's give them credit where credit is due. Very effective job of slowing the Russians down, creating, a credible defense, counterattacking where necessary. But they don't have the ammunition anymore, the artillery to allow them that. Without artillery, the Russians now have total fire superiority over the battlefield. The Ukrainians tried to adapt it by swarming drones in. What the Russians did is said, okay, you want to fly a drone? We're going after the guys who fly the drones. And so now the Russians have brought in, I'd hate to be a Ukrainian drone operator right now, because you're sitting there doing your drone, and all of a sudden a Fab 500 comes in, 1,000-pound bomb, precision guided, bam, and you're dead. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And the Ukrainian drone operators have the shortest life expectancy on the battlefield right now, because the second they open up, Russian electronic warfare locates them, and then assets come in and kill them. So for a while there, the Ukrainians are saying, "Hey, we're going to hold them off with drones." No, drones are gone. The operators are gone. The Russians are advancing. The war's in its final stages now. There's a lot of fighting left. I just remind people, the bloodiest month of the war for Americans in World War II on the European front wasn't D-Day, wasn't June, it wasn't Operation Cobra July, it wasn't the Battle of the Bulge in December, it wasn't the Hurtgen Forest in January 45. It was April 45 when the war was over. The war was over. There was nothing. Nobody was saying the Germans are going to hold out. Everybody knew the war was over. We lost more men in that month because there was a lot of fighting left in a dying army. There's a lot of fighting left in the Ukrainians. 880,000 men have to be killed, captured, wounded, or otherwise disposed of. So there's a lot of fighting left. Plus, the Russians still have some major objectives. It's becoming clear right now that this war doesn't end until Odessa is in Russian hands, Mykolaiv is in Russian hands, Dnipropetrovsk, Kharkov. Now, this will happen when you have the collapse of the Ukrainian army, because as they collapse, they will have no choice but to withdraw to the other side of the Dnieper River, which concedes all of this to Russia. And so this is what's happening right now. That we are literally in the end game. But the end game of World War II was from January 45 to early May 45. A lot of guys died. There was a lot of fighting. Hell, the Germans launched some major counterattacks in Hungary, Lake Balaton. At the final days of the war, if you take a look at if you read the Russian, the Soviet accounts, they're advancing, and every day the Germans counterattack. The battle for Berlin, the Germans counterattack. That's what professional people do. So as the Russians advance, the Ukrainians will counterattack. There will be Russian losses, but it's not going to affect the outcome. This war is over. And here's the other news flash. There's nothing the West can do to stop this. I think Olaf Scholz just published a op-ed in the New York Times where he said, we have to, give them the weapon. What weapons, Olaf? You don't produce any ammunition. You don't have any ammunition left. So let's just say that the U.S. Congress miraculously said, here's $64 billion. We know that 60% of that is going to be redirected to American defense industries to produce weapons. That means that we have to build them. In some cases, we have to get the production line up and running. That means that the Ukrainians won't get anything from this for months, maybe years down the road. Their army is collapsing right now. Unless NATO has the ability to magically produce 2 million artillery shells, around 1,000 artillery pieces, around 500 tanks, and the 90,000 highly trained Ukrainian forces necessary to operate this equipment, in effect creating a whole new Ukrainian army overnight, right now, ready to work. There's nothing NATO can do to stop this. The collapse has happened. There's no forces left to plug. Even if Ukraine mobilizes 500,000, these will be poorly trained troops, poorly motivated troops, poorly equipped troops. They'll be slaughtered on the battlefield along with everybody else. So the war's over.
What are your thoughts about the increasingly aggressive rhetoric from NATO and NATO countries? We're going to have to go to war with Russia anytime now. It looks like we're going to have to fight them. The Brits, who've got like 11 guys, they're like, yeah, we're going to be the tip of the spear against the Russians. The last time I watched videos of one of their stinking frigates slamming into the other. They couldn't even turn the boat around in a harbor. They another article where their nuclear sub, some bolts came out of the nuclear reactor and they used super glue to hold it together. And now they're the crown of the Royal Navy, their aircraft carrier had again problems with the props and shafts, and they're unable to get underway. Things ain't looking good for the Brits. And to me, that sums up all of NATO, as John Wayne. What was the movie where somebody said something about killing John Wayne? And he said, that's big talk for a one-eyed fat man. That's pretty much. But anyway, your thoughts on NATO. They've got 90,000 men poised. Poland's ready to go. I'm reading Poland's ready to go and all of this crap. The Baltic states, these countries that basically have collectively, they have less people in the entire countries, all like 3 of them together, than the state of Maryland that I live in. But they're doing a lot of, they're going to go to conscription now. They're all barking, we're ready to take on Russia. What do you have about this Chihuahua barking at the tractor trailer stuff going on there, Scott Ritter?
Well, understand that every NATO, wet dream or fantasy or whatever you want to call this war lust that they suddenly have been imbued with, it's predicated on Russia attacking them. So I think everybody just needs to take a big chill pill, because Russia's not going to attack NATO. It's not in Russia's interest. Russia has no desire to do this. And so, this is just fear-mongering on the part of NATO in a desperate bid to become relevant. NATO has nothing right now. I mean, they're doing this big exercise. I can't remember the name of it.
Enduring freedom. They always name it something like that, enduring freedom or some kind of crap. It always has something to do like
Defender or something
exactly,
like that.
Yeah.
90,000 men, the largest exercise since 1988 when there was 125,000. But if you look at it, the vast majority of these troops are either they're on board 50 NATO vessels, 49. I'm sorry, because the British aircraft carrier had to withdraw. And then there's logistics troops, because a lot of this is just pure logistics. This is just about exercising how to get people into a port, onto trains, onto highways, moved, how to supply them, etc. In 1988, Reforger, which was the old the reinforcement of forces to or the return of forces to Germany exercises, we brought in 125,000 troops, and they married up with pre-positioned equipment, because we have these giant, stockpiles of equipment ready, maintained, ready to rock, fueled, ammunition, the whole thing. Lion, they had ammunition dumps where all the ammo they needed to do. They had fuel dumps. They had everything, and they fall in. They can literally get off the airplane and 2 days later be in the field ready to go to war. And that's that we trained, we practiced that. But that reforger exercise, 125, it involved like 1,300 tanks, something along that line, or 1,100 tanks. This exercise, the 90,000, involves 133 tanks. It's one brigade. That's it. That's all NATO can do. This is supposed to exercise a 300,000 strong force capable of rapidly responding. And this exercise is going to unfold over the course of many months. This isn't just one big exercise. It's a whole bunch of little exercises. And it's what it proves is that NATO can't do what NATO says it wants to do, put 300,000 men in the field at once to respond to Russia. Can't do it. One of the biggest exercises they have is landing a couple hundred guys in Norway and seeing if they can transport them from Norway across Sweden into Finland, where they could, are supposed to be responding to a Russian invasion of Finland. First of all, if Russia invades Finland, you're going to have to move around 200, 300,000 troops in, and you can't do it. You don't have the infrastructure in place to do it. This exercise is supposed to identify those infrastructure problems so they can then spend tens of billions, hundreds of billions of dollars building the infrastructure. Nobody's going to spend that money. This is an exercise that's going to prove just how toothless and feckless NATO is. And I think it's a good lesson for NATO to learn, because they're going to realize that the price tag associated with trying to fight Russia is prohibitive, especially when the premise is fundamentally flawed. And the Russians have said all along, look, Medvedev is on record. You guys do understand that if you go to war against us, it's not going to be Ukraine. It's not going to be Desert Storm. It's going to be, we're going to nuke you. The name of the war is Russia nukes NATO. And that's just the way it's going to be. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And we're not preparing for some large-scale ground invasion. If you guys want a war with us, we don't want it. But if you want it, I'm just telling you how it's going to end. We will nuke every single one of your cities. And just imagine being an American tourist and you got your bucket list, going to Europe. I want to see London. London won't exist. I want to see Berlin. It won't exist. I want to see Paris. No, Rome, no, none of it. Brussels, none of it. It will all be gone, a smoking ruin. Now, I'm sure Russia will pay a price too, but that's not Russia's fault. What Russia is saying is, we don't want a war, but if you want it, this is what you're going to get. Stop fantasizing about putting 300,000 men in the field and hooking and jabbing with us on the field of battle. That war will never happen. If we go to war against you, we're blowing you off the face of the earth. We're killing everybody. And that's the only way a war between Russia and NATO will be prosecuted. And hopefully there's people getting that signal going, oh yeah, we don't want it. Because especially, imagine yourself being a German farmer. You just had your subsidies cut because your German economy is collapsing, because your government's incompetent and they've bankrupted themselves by cutting off cheap Russian energy and trying to sanction, but it backfired. All the industry is fleeing. There's nothing left, but they want to send money. They just approved $54 billion spread out over 3 years to go to Ukraine. Most of that's coming from Germany. The German farmers going, wait a minute, you've destroyed the economy. Now you're sending all the money to Ukraine, and in order to pay for that, you're cutting our farmer subsidies, and we can't do our job. So German farmers aren't happy about this. None of the farmers in Europe are happy. Everywhere I go, there's farmers surrounding a capital city, shutting down economy, shutting down a highway. Back in December 2021, January, February 2022, I wrote a couple of articles, and I said that if the West sanctions Russia, it's going to end in one thing: revolutionary change in Europe. And you and I have talked about this. Revolutionary change. It's happening right now, Garland. It's a revolution taking place. It's not violent yet, but it's taking place. The citizens of these nations are fed up with these feckless, these corrupt governments that are giving away their money to a lost cause. It doesn't matter what you believe about Ukraine, whether it's a functioning democracy, it's not. Whether it's, this wonderful bastion of freedom, it's not. But it doesn't matter what you believe. The fact is the war's lost. And there's no reason to keep, if you care about the Ukrainians, there's no reason to keep this war going, because all that's going to happen is more death and destruction. And meanwhile, all the money you're sending there is money that the citizens desperately need. So, we're just in interesting times. But the bottom line is, I'm hopeful that there will be a discussion, a broader discussion, once this fear-mongering ends. Look, I've always said that the way to shut down this debate is for Russia to win this war and win it decisively, to confront Europe and NATO with the absolute worst case scenario they've all feared and say, this is it. We won. There's no Ukraine left. And NATO's going, and no, that's it. No, we won. There's no Ukraine left. You're not going to advance on Berlin? Nope, never wanted to. You're not going to take the Baltics? Nope, don't want to. Poland? No, I have no interest in it. We did this. Now we'd like to talk to you. And maybe at that point in time, people say, hey, I'd prefer to talk than to fight and have them nuke us. So the sooner Russia wins, the sooner sanity, I think, will prevail in Europe. But Medvedev's made it clear, if you want to fight us, understand the outcome. You will all die. None of these troops that you're exercising in this 90,000 strong thing will ever, they'll be on the battlefield for a day, 2 days, and then they die with you, because we're going to nuke everything. There won't be anything left.
That brings me to this, to the next subject, because the false narrative that they're using, I think part of this, Russia's coming to get us, Russia's scary, Russia wants to attack us. I think part of that is to scare the people into supporting sending more money to the Ukraine. That's, I think that's part of it. We've got to look at that. We got to do this big. We've got to plan. We've got to do all these things. If Russia wins, we're all done. They're going to immediately come across through the Saviki Gap or whatever it is, and we're going to have to fight them. So therefore, this is what I think it is. Therefore, we better give them all of our money right now. I think that's the big part of it. Now, here's where I go to from there. Tucker Carlson. They're losing their minds. And I think part of it is, what happens when Tucker Carlson goes and says to Vladimir Putin, hey, you planning on invading NATO? And he's like, wait, you out of your mind? Of course not. When he asked the question, these crazy narratives that they use to influence, to bamboozle their populations, and some guy just goes up to the guy in charge and says, look, are you planning on doing this or that? And the guy's like, no. Why'd you do this? This is why. And all of these narratives are holes are punched in the narratives. They're struggling why I've heard all this. He's doing it for this reason or that reason, which I can care less why he's doing it. I don't care if he's doing it for money. I don't care if he's doing it to build his brand. I don't care. I want to hear what the questions that are asked and what's being said. Your thoughts on this whole Tucker Carlson thing, the importance of it and everything, Scott.
Well, first of all, I think what Tucker's doing is extraordinarily important. I'm going to be honest, Garland. I'm jealous.
Me too.
I've been banging my head against this brick wall for years, trying to improve U.S.-Russian relations, and I'd actually put in a request to interview the senior Russian leadership, on this last trip, and was told that wasn't going to happen because they didn't want, whatever, it's the Russian government's business, so I'm like, okay. And now Tucker comes in, he gets the interview, and I'm like, but the fact of the matter is, you got to step back and think strategically. My platform is like, and Tucker Carlson's platform is like this, which might be one of the reasons why the Russians said so. Plus, the world's changed. We have the United States and Europe talking about a war with Russia, talking about NATO going to war. We just talked about this. And one of the ways that is sold is through Russophobia being injected into society, by blocking any ability to have meaningful discussion on the mainstream, to mainline a real discussion about U.S.-Russian relations. And Scott Ritter, and I'm sorry, Garland, I'll have to say too, Garland Nixon getting an interview with Vladimir Putin, we're not going to change the needle. We're not going to move the needle. As much as we like to believe we could, Tucker Carlson has already moved the damn needle. The needle has gone bam, slamming. The whole world's up in a roar because he's doing that which the mainstream can't allow it to happen. He's going to allow Vladimir Putin's voice to be heard. He's doing the job No, he's not. There's no violation of the Logan Act here. I'm not accusing him of that. But, you know, why do we need a journalist to go and ask the Russian president questions? Why don't we have an ambassador who goes to meet with the Russian leader or meet with the foreign minister? Why is it that Anatoly Antonov in Moscow, the Russian ambassador, sits in his office all day waiting for a phone call to come in from the State Department, from the White House, for people to ask those questions? There are vehicles in place. It's called diplomacy. And if we did this with the Russians, we'd have this. But what we've been doing is we block that because we don't want to deal with reality. We being the United States, the political economic elites. We want to bamboozle, and I love your word, so I'm stealing it, bamboozle the population into, being afraid. And from this fear that's derived from ignorance, they then say, protect us. And that provides an excuse and a legitimacy to more defense spending, et cetera. And that's what's happening right now. We keep the American public cowed in fear based upon their ignorance about what the reality of Russia is. We have an academic elite in Stanford, that idiot. My wife gets mad when I use that word, but it's truly the appropriate word for Michael McFaul. He's an idiot. We have Angela Stent in Georgetown, accompanied by all the former CIA and State Department losers who had failed policy their entire career, and now they're teaching failed policy to a new generation of wannabe diplomats who will implement failed policy because that's all they know how to do is fail. Nobody's having the conversations that have to be had except Tucker Carlson, and it's the most wonderful thing in the world. I hope to God, and I have confidence of, because you can say whatever you want about Tucker, and he and I have gone through the ringer together. In the past, if I had met him, I would have punched him on sight. Now I love the guy. I think he's great. We've hashed out our differences. I'm 100% on Team Tucker right now. I am Team Tucker all the way, and I have confidence that he taking this big step, because there are risks associated with this. This isn't like Tucker. It takes courage to do what Tucker Carlson's done. Whatever you think about the guy, understand that he has giant cojones, and he went in to the lion's den. I go there and I get a microscope put on me, and I get hit. Twitter calls me names, and oh God, I cry to sleep at night because I got called names on Twitter. But I get attacked and all that stuff. But it's nothing. It's water off a duck's back. Tucker Carlson has this giant magnifying glass put over him right now, and you have people talking about seizing his passport. You have people talking about arresting him. You have people talking about travel ban in Europe. I mean, this life altering stuff, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, I don't think he broke any law. In fact, I know he didn't break any laws, but that doesn't stop the U.S. government from just slapping him with a charge and forcing him to go to court, expend time, energy, and resources. This is a risk. I'm not saying the U.S. government is doing it. In fact, I think this interview is so damn big that the U.S. government can't touch him. He's untouchable by this, which is a gamble he took. Thank God he's backed by Elon Musk, because now there's an absolute guarantee that this word is going to get out. Hundreds of millions of people are going to be impacted by. There will be impressions about this interview. It will change the dynamic in the domestic audience here in America and in Europe, as people are compelled to listen to what Putin has to say and then reflect on the fact that what he's saying makes a hell of a lot more sense than any of the nonsense that's coming out of Washington, D.C., London, Brussels, Paris, anywhere. And suddenly the population is going to say, we've been lied to this entire time. We have been lied to. And this lie has cost us trillions of dollars and millions of lives collectively around the world to take on this Russian threat that doesn't exist. That doesn't exist. So what Tucker's doing here is literally a game-changing moment. It has the potential to be. I mean, we'll find out later on tonight. Like I said, I have the utmost confidence that Tucker, the professional, has created. And the other thing is, you have to understand that Vladimir Putin, he's a professional too. And he's surrounded by professionals. The Russians aren't being led here like naive little kids. What you want to interview me? Oh, okay. No. There's a vetting process that takes place. Tucker had to audition and say, this is why you should allow this unprecedented interview to take place, the first of its kind since the war started, to take place. As as the Peskov, the spokesperson for the Kremlin said, it's not that Tucker's the only person that ever applied, but but we didn't say yes to anybody because for one reason or the other we didn't deem it to be a responsible platform or adequate to the task or whatever. It's their business. But Tucker came in and they looked at his track record and said this guy can do a responsible thing. He has a platform where there will be an impact. But the Russians, I can guarantee you, are as much control of this interview. And I don't mean dictating to Tucker what they say, but Putin's a smart, savvy guy. He's prepared for any question that Tucker's going to answer. He has the answer. He knows what he wants an American audience to hear because this, believe it or not, Putin will be speaking to the American people. 100%. This is Vladimir Putin speaking to the American people. And I'll tell you what, if you're an American, listen. In 2018, he got up and gave a speech about nuclear weapons, about the need for Russia to build nuclear weapons. He said, we didn't want to do this. We've been talking to you all along. We said, don't pull out of the ABM treaty. Don't deploy these missiles. Don't do this. But you never listened to us. Are you listening now? That's what he said. He looked right. Said, are you listening now? And the answer is no, we weren't, because we continue to do this insanity. This is Putin going to be looking to the American people through the lens of Tucker Carlson saying, are you listening now? And we better be listening because this is literally one of our last chances to get it right. If the American people don't listen to this interview, don't absorb what Vladimir Putin has to say and realize that we've been lied to from day one by this political and economic elite, the Hillary Clintons, the whole fantasy of Russian collusion, the FBI running wild on this nonsense, the talk about this, that, and the other. We got, again, this warmongering. Russia's going to invade. It's all a lie. Everything you've been told about Russia is a lie. And now the American people have a chance to realize this. This interview is the greatest threat to the deep state's nefarious anti-Russian strategy, because this could pop the balloon. This could unravel. This could be the beginning of the end. As the American people go, whoa, we've been lied to. Now they'll start doing what I've been doing and what you've been doing, what others have been doing, saying, hey, I want to know more about Russia. I'd like to learn more about this. Maybe I'd like to travel to Russia. And I tell you what, that's the end of the world. Once Americans start traveling to Russia, game, set, match, it's over, because Russia sells itself. Russia doesn't need me to sell it. They don't need you to sell it. They don't need Tucker to sell it. Once you step foot in Russia, it sells itself because they are good people. They are industrious people. They love life just like we do. They appreciate their cultures, their values, but not to the extent where they try to intimidate you or dominate you. They just say, this is who we are. We're an open book. Come on in. And I haven't met a person yet who's gone to Russia and said, no, Navalny supporters, I guess, Michael McFaul, people with agendas, of course. But if you go to Russia with an open mind and open heart, you're won over. And you'll walk out saying, you're not going to be saying, we need to go to war against you people. You're going to be saying, I need to get another job and save up money because I got to go back. This is cool. This is a big country. I want to see it all, baby. It's nice. This is the process that's beginning now because of what Tucker Carlson is doing. So, if there was a just world, Tucker Carlson would get the Presidential Medal of Freedom down the road. He earned it. He deserved it. He is doing the American people such a great service. He's doing the world he's doing the Russian people such a great service. Now, he may not own all that. He may say, I'm just a journalist, but Tucker's smarter than that. He knows what the hell he's doing. And I think he knows why he's doing it. And I think he's doing it because Tucker Carlson wants to save the world. And this interview has the potential of getting us down the path of saving the world, of moving us off of this path of NATO-directed conflict. I mean, I'm sick and tired of listening to Western people talking about the inevitability of war with Russia, knowing that a war with Russia would be a nuclear conflict where we all die. Tucker Carlson saying, I don't want that outcome. So he's beginning a process of opening people's minds. I tell you what, I am very proud to be an American today. And I'm very happy to be alive at this moment because I think this interview is going to be the beginning of a lot of really good stuff. Now, I may be overly optimistic. Some people might even call me naive. Maybe it's because I've been confronted with, the daunting reality of how difficult it is to inoculate the American people against Russophobia. I've been to Russia twice now in the span of less than a year. And I've learned so much, and I understand how difficult it is to transfer that knowledge to the American people. Tucker Carlson, I've been trying to basically shove a whole bunch of knowledge into this tiny little tube and force it into the American. Tucker Carlson coming in with a damn sledgehammer, and he's tearing down the obstacle. There's going to be a giant pipe that information is going to flow, and he's making everybody's job who wants to promote peace and better relations with Russia that much easier. So God bless Tucker Carlson, and maybe the next president of the United States, once we get rid of Joe Biden and this political class that's pursuing war, will recognize Tucker Carlson for the hero that he is and give him the recognition he deserves, and that's the Presidential Medal of Freedom.
There's another aspect to this that I would like to, particularly in the context of what you and I are doing right now. A friend of mine said last night, he calls me, he says, well, but the MSNBC and CNN are going to trash him. I said, well, that's the bad news. Like I said, the good news is who the hell's watching MSNBC and CNN anymore? Somebody, only the true believers who believe, Russiagate and, whatever they're told. So their brains are already fried. Who cares about them? They're, maybe even some of them will wake up. But the other part, I think, is this is one of the final nails in the coffin of this neocon warmongering media. That the argument, of course, you gotta go to CNN and MSNBC, the papers of record, the Washington Post, the New York Times. That's where you go. I remember people used to say to me, I read the New York Times and the Washington Post every day, so I really keep with what's going on with the papers of records. People are starting to realize that, they're just, the Pentagon leaked something to them and then reports that, hey, it was in the New York Times, it has to be true. What are your thoughts on the aspect of this, that this is new media? He's not going on the mainstream media. Not only is he not going on the mainstream media, the mainstream media is going to say, don't watch him. He's terrible. Everything he said is a lie. He's a traitor. And people are going to be watching this with their own eyes. I think this is one of the stakes in the heart of the compliant, intelligence-owned neocon warmongering media.
Yeah. Look, when I was in college, and that was a long time ago, I was told by my professors, especially in international relations, I was encouraged to subscribe, student rate, to both the New York Times and the Washington Post. And I was told, A, it's my job to read these newspapers every morning to empower myself with knowledge and information, but B, that I could use those newspapers as sources of record, meaning that if I'm writing a paper or doing analysis, I can cite a report in the New York Times as if it's fact, established fact. That's the confidence that people had in those newspapers. And I carried that with me out of college into my adult existence. When I got to the United Nations, there was a reporter, New York Times beat reporter, who ran the UN account. And I was in the middle of a crisis where I figured prominently in every aspect of this crisis, not only what was going on in Iraq, but the work that was done behind the scenes in the various capitals. I was the crisis. And so they convened a meeting of the Special Commission, an emergency meeting of the Special Commission, where we got together and Lavrov was there, everybody was there, and we were briefing them. And so I was down there briefing, talking about listening to all the interplay. And I see the deputy executive chairman, a State Department man named Charles Dulfer, as it's coming to close, get up and leave. I'm like, that's strange. Charles left. And then the next morning, the New York Times runs a story about this meeting, about the crisis that I center in, that I know everything about. There's not a single aspect of this crisis that I didn't know about because it's all about me. Mm-hmm. And I'm reading this report, and it doesn't have anything. It's about this meeting. It's about the crisis, and has nothing to do with reality. It's 100% manufactured because Charles Dulfer went out and briefed the New York Times reporter who wrote what he told her to write. And suddenly the light went off and I went, well, the New York Times sucks. If there's a student out there right now told they can read the New York Times and treat this as established fact, every word in this report was a lie. And then I went back and deconstructed it and I went, they've been lying all along. literally, and this was in 1998 that this news flash went off. I worked for NBC back in after I resigned 1999, 98, 99. And I'd be in, I was on air talent. You know what that's like. And so I'm there, and Tom Brokaw fell in love with me, and they're all da da da. So I'm in this meeting, and we're talking about this, the off the record meeting that the National Security Advisor has every Sunday to set the tone for the week. So Sandy Berger would call this in, and you were allowed to talk to him about an unnamed senior government official. And so he's there, and I said, "Do you guys want to play a game? It's called Watch Sandy Berger Lie." And they went, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, he's lying." "Well, can you prove?" I said, "Yeah, here's 5 questions. Send it to Claire Shipman. She's the reporter, NBC reporter at the White House. Ask these questions, and by the time you ask the first question, he's going to commit. By the time you ask the last question, he's going to lie. And he's going to be caught in the lie because I got him. I own him. I know what's going on." So they did it. She's asking the questions, and Berger stops her and says, "I know Scott Ritter wrote these questions for you." How did he know? Because only Scott Ritter knew what these were questions. And he said, "This is unacceptable. And if you ever do this again, I will kick you out of the White House poll." Now, I'm thinking that's revolution time, that reporters, American journalism is going to stand up and say, "You can't do that. We demand the truth." "Oh, I am Spartacus." Claire Shipman reported back, I was fired within a week. Gone, finished. Because that's the reality of the American media. It sucks. The American media isn't there to tell the truth to the American people. The American media is there to play a game with the government. And what Tucker Carlson's doing is not part of that game. Look, CNN, I had to laugh. Erin Burnett, she sat there and she's slamming Tucker. He's going to have a love fest with Vladimir Putin. Did you see the clip of her interview with Zelensky?
No.
It's soft porn. I'm sorry. It's soft porn. Literally, they film it in Zelensky, and all of a sudden it's like, you got to come down. It shows his pec, and then it comes up in his eyes. He's looking at her like, and she's talking to him, and then he gives an answer, and you look at her face. She's like, oh. And we're sitting there going, my wife and I are watching going, I said, "Honey, I've been married to you for 33 years. You've never looked at me the way that Erin Burnett's looking at Zelensky right now."
That could be a meme. That could be a meme. You have your wife or you want your wife or girlfriend to look at you like Erin Burnett looks at
Zelensky. Because I tell you what, it's pure love. It's lust. It's unadulterated lust. That's not reporting, but that's okay for Erin Burnett to lust after Zelensky in this interview, because it is. Anybody watch it, people. It's there. You know what I'm talking about. So Tucker Carlson's going to sit there and ask a question of Putin area. "Oh, he gave in. He's under the control of Putin." No. Ain't nobody under the control of anybody like Erin Burnett was under the control of Zelensky. I think I know why Zelensky's wife is unhappy with him, because
right.
We know what happened after the interview was done. Sorry, Erin, you dug this hole yourself. But the point is, you have Hillary Clinton slamming Tucker. You have everybody slamming Tucker. The entire media is turned against Tucker. Why? Not because he's doing anything wrong, because he's seeking the truth. And this also is beautiful. Elon Musk, look, are you still banned from Twitter? Yeah. So Elon Musk is a son of a bitch. Sorry, Elon, but stick it in your ear. Bring Garland on and I'll love you again. But, but he's on some issues, he's provided. Tucker said he couldn't do this unless Elon Musk guaranteed that this interview would be shown unedited. There's not a single other platform out there that would allow this interview to go forward. They'd all cave under the pressure. So in many ways, we have Elon Musk to thank for this. And if this happens, what it's saying is, we don't need you anymore. This is like, the American people, we're looking to alternative media, but it's like, teenagers, we still have to come home, because at the end of the day, we need mommy to cook a meal. We need daddy's paycheck to pay for things. We want to be independent, but we can't be because we're nervous about life, and we keep looking to alternative media saying, could I take that step? No, I can't take the step. I have to come back and I have to get my news from mainstream media, because I'm so unsure of myself. Man, this could sink mainstream media. First of all, the numbers we're talking about, the business model that will accrue, because media is business. If you can show that you can get, more advertising revenue or generate more revenue for a show like this than you can on mainstream. Other people are going to be jumping ship. You're going to see, maybe Aaron Burnett will sit there and go, why am I lusting after Zelensky on behalf of CNN when I could jump out and make my own show and maybe do all those things I really wanted to do that I can't do because mainstream media won't let me do it. They won't let me ask these questions. I have to read a script. We now know that CNN, even CNN, irresponsible CNN, they're saying we're tired of being told we have to present this pro-Israeli line. CNN reporters, the worst people in the world, have a conscience apparently. And apparently they're looking at it saying, this ain't the truth. We need to be asking more questions, but they can't because their management, the people who pay them, say, no, we are going with a 100% pro-Israeli line here. Maybe Aaron Burnett will suddenly grow a conscience and say, no, I'm going out on my own so I can ask the questions that I know need to be asked. It would be nice to see more mainstream journalists say, we're tired of this game, unplug, and suddenly you have this shift. It's like going from American hegemony to multipolarity in the world. You would see this shift from the hegemony of mainstream media shifting over to alternative media, which stops being alternative media, which becomes mainstream in its own right, but it's not under the centralized control of big corporations working with the U.S. government. It's under decentralized control where individuals are empowered with the ability to say, this is what we want to do. This is how we want to do it. We still need an Elon Musk. I would love to see the Supreme Court come in and as we make this transition to extend free speech interpretation to say to Google, you can't censor. That you, even though it's a private platform, I'm sorry, you've stepped into the public, the realm of public discussion. So no censorship, none whatsoever, zero. I'm not saying you can break the law, but you can't sit there and say, we're not going to allow Garland Nixon to talk about Yemen. We're not going to allow Scott Ritter to talk about Hamas. We're not going to allow Tucker Carlson to interview Vladimir Putin. Free speech is free speech. Louis Brandeis, he was a Supreme Court justice, 1927, the United States versus Michigan, I think was the case. He basically said, look, the solution to bad ideas is better ideas. And therefore, the way you get better ideas is more free speech. That you don't, the last thing a nation like the United States wants to do is shut down speech to prevent the discussion and dialogue. That the best way to get the right information out there is through the process of debate, dialogue, and discussion. More free speech, more free speech. And I'd love to see that attitude applied to the internet. More free speech. Look, if you don't like what I'm saying, you have two options. One, click, turn me off. Hey, that's it. Or two, challenge me. Come back with your own statements. That's the beauty of the internet. Hell, excuse my language. I put tweets out there all the time. And some people go, hey, good job, Scott. We love your tweets. Other people say, we don't. And they come in. Most of the time, it's, juvenile attacks. But every once in a while, somebody will come in with substance. I was having an interaction with a Ukrainian, and it started off juvenile. They all start that way. But, you put stuff on the table, and he's coming back with substance. Now, I disagree with him. But I told him, I said, you know what? I respect you because
right.
you believe in what you're saying and you are defending your position. And I respect that. I disagree with everything you're saying, but I'm not going to attack you. I'm not going to belittle you because this is what needs to happen. We need to be able to have this interchange of ideas and stop making it, you're a horrible human being. You're this. It's about the ideas, about the facts, about how I articulate the facts. And if we can transition the social media realm, the internet realm, the alternative media realm into that kind of exchange, man, it will be enlightening. It will be empowering. It will be everything that mainstream media isn't.
Last thing I want to hit. The Joe Biden, I don't know. I hate to use the word policy when it comes to the Middle East because it seems like they have no clue what they're doing, which is fairly obvious. The level of incompetence is absolutely stunning. But the recent thing they did, okay, we're going to bomb the Iraqis. Oh, we told the Iraqis that we were going to bomb them. And the Iraqis said, no, they didn't. Oh yeah, that's right. We didn't tell the Iraqis that we were going to bomb them. Now we have tens, if not hundreds of thousands of Iraqis in the street surrounding the green zone. They got people up there. This was yesterday, protecting the green zone. We've got Iraqis saying the Americans have to go, Yankee go home. So now we have the Biden administration. We got troops in Syria illegally. We have troops in Iraq illegally, and the people in Iraq are going home. It looks like our days are numbered in the Middle East. Your thoughts about this? But and they're bombing, Yemen, which is a total waste of time because the Yemen people they're acting on principle. You're not going to bomb somebody out of their principles. They believe that it is their religious duty. I can argue that it is their legal duty under international law to do everything they can to prevent genocide. But your thoughts on these bombing runs in Iraq, and now the Iraqis are like, you got to get the hell out of here. We've had enough of this crap.
It's interesting. We have American troops there. We can go through the long history of how we got there, et cetera. But the bottom line is we went there, saying that we got reintroduced. Obama reintroduced American troops into Iraq in 2014 in the aftermath of the ISIS expansion. And so we went there. Just to remind people, there's an iconic photograph around Tikrit that shows American troops on one side of the road in their Humvees and all this stuff with their machine guns. And on the other side, there's people walking. And it's a group of Iraqi Quds Force. And at the head of it is Qasem Soleimani, the head of the Quds Force. And we were working with Qasem. We were on the same side fighting the same enemy, ISIS. So there was a period of time where there was a legitimate anti-ISIS coalition. We don't want to talk about how ISIS is an outgrowth of AQI, Al-Qaeda, Iraq, and how we actually facilitated that expansion of AQI into Syria as part of our strategy of bringing down Bashar al-Assad. We don't want to talk about that because that's inconvenient. Now we're talking about the anti-ISIS mission. Then we turn that, we pursue ISIS into Syria. We get into northeastern Syria. We now have to work with the Kurds, who are terrorists because they're all affiliated with the PKK, Turkish group, but we renamed them the Syrian Democratic Forces so that we can work with them. But it's not really about ISIS at this point in time. It's about seizing the oil so that we can destabilize Bashar al-Assad. And then as ISIS collapsed, the Syrians start pushing out to recapture their territory. And we say, holy cow, if they take control of the border, we've lost all ability to influence the things inside. So we project power into Tanf, which is the area, near Tower 22, which is the place attacked. And we create this thing called Area 55, where we have American Special Forces and American troops there to train anti-government Syrian tribes formerly affiliated with ISIS. Here's the irony of it, man, because we're training ISIS to carry out terrorist attacks against the Syrian government. That's what we're doing. We are literally a state sponsor of terror in Syria today. Honest to God, war criminals, the whole thing. Now, the average American soldier there doesn't see it that way. They're just obeying orders. But I'm just here to tell the American audience that we are committing war crimes on a daily basis. We are illegally occupying Syria. We have no legal jurisdiction there. The Syrian government did not invite us. They want us to leave, but we continue to stay there. So now we have that presence there. We start bombing as a way of deterring. We support this genocide in Gaza. The militias rise up and say we don't support that. They attack us, and we lost 3 American service members. Tragic. What was our response? Now, I would imagine that the discussion is, how do we do force protection? That's always how do we do force protection? How do we protect these troops? And how do we protect our position in the region? Now, if I had been advisor, I'd say, well, the way we protect the troops right now is to engage diplomatically, that we take the indirect approach and try to resolve this Gaza thing, at least make the appearance that we're trying. So at least we can turn to the Iraqis and say, hey, we're trying, but we need you to ease up a little bit. This attacking stuff isn't helping the situation at all. Let us do what we need to do. We need to buy some time, take the pressure off, stop attacking us. I think they would have said yes if we had approached the Iranians. That whole diplomacy thing is amazing when it works. But we didn't do that. What we said is, we're bigger and badder than you, and we insist that you stop or we're going to beat the living dog poop out of you. And they went, we're not going to stop. They attacked, killed 3 guys. We bombed. Now what's happened? We are in an untenable situation. Untenable. We cannot sustain our presence anymore. Iraq has rose up against it. The stupidity of the Biden administration. Hell, it's the stupidity of Americans in particular. We killed a guy from, Hezbollah. No, he's not really from Hezbollah. He's from Kaitab al-Hezbollah, which is a PMU, a public militia unit, which is part of the Iraqi army. Please understand what happened here, ladies and gentlemen. We didn't kill a militia leader. We didn't kill a rogue agent. We killed a member of the Iraqi army in downtown Baghdad. And you ask yourself why the Iraqis are up in an uproar. It's over. We've lost all legitimacy. So now the military operation designed to not only, protect American troops in Tomp, we've basically compromised the entire posture in the region. We will be compelled to leave Syria and Iraq because of the stupidity of this desire for revenge, this need for revenge. We never asked the question, why are they there to begin with? Understand there is no legitimate reason for American troops to be in Syria or Iraq today. We don't do a real anti-ISIS mission anymore. The American troops are in Iraq to provide a logistical hub from which we project power into Syria so that we can create the conditions to destabilize the Assad regime, because it's about regime change. That's what our policy is about, regime change. That's against the law. But Americans never really cared about the law. But the bottom line is it's over for us in the Middle East. We're finished. And when we withdraw from Syria, we withdraw from Iraq, we lose all sorts of leverage. You're going to start to see people questioning whether or not it's a good idea to be friends with America anymore. We may lose the Fifth Fleet in Bahrain because it becomes untenable. One thing that the Houthi have done is shown that we can't keep a strategic strait open. That if somebody wants to shut down a strait, they're going to, and there's no amount of bombing that's going to prevent it. And there's another strategic strait that's even more important than the Bab el-Mandeb. It's the Strait of Hormuz. And for years, the United States Navy said, we guarantee that if Iran ever tries to shut it down, we will keep it open. The whole world knows that that guarantee is worthless, that if Iran wants to shut it down, it's shut down, and there's nothing the United States can do to keep it open. If they shut that down, the global economy collapses. So, we are dumber than dirt, literally. This USA chest thumping, we got to avenge 3 American service members murdered. Well, they're murdered because of our policy. They're murdered because they're place where they don't belong, and they were put at risk by the stupidity of our policies. We murdered them. Don't blame the Iraqi militias. First of all, understand that the Iraqi militias and the Syrian militias are defending their soil against an illegal foreign occupier. They're more American than we are, because that's what we would do if somebody illegally occupied. Every single one of you red-necked, meat-eating idiots going USA, USA, you know damn well that if somebody came in and occupied your state, occupied a town, and was harassing you, bombing you, you would take your God-given Second Amendment right to take your guns and go after them and try to kill them, because that's what patriots do. These aren't terrorists. These Iraqis who attacked us aren't terrorists. These Syrians who attacked us aren't terrorists. They're damn patriots defending their homeland against an illegal occupier who's trying to do things that are violations of the law of war. America is the bad guy here, guys. And the shame is 3 Americans who aren't part of the decision makers, who are truly innocent in this regard, even though they wear the uniform, they're dead. Dozens are wounded, and more are going to die because of this. America, we have to start looking in the mirror and thinking logically. The golden rule, do unto others as you would want done unto you. Nobody wants foreigners on their soil, occupying, stealing oil, killing their people. Nobody wants that. No Palestinian wants a brutal Zionist occupying force. Again, I just ask people, go look at the story of the family in Gaza that got shot up by the Israelis, civilians. The Israelis killed the mother and the father. I think there's some other family relatives in there. There's a 15-year-old girl and a 6-year-old girl left in the car. The 15-year-old girl's on the phone begging for help as the Israelis come in and kill her live. You hear it screaming as the bullets impact her body. There's a 6-year-old girl there hiding in the bodies. She gets on the phone and says, everybody's dead. I'm hungry. I'm starving. The Palestinians send 2 paramedics to try and get her. They've gone missing. If you're a human being, you can't allow this to happen, but we allow it to happen. Do you know why the world hates us? Do you know why we're the bad guys? Because we are the bad guys. Because we allow this evil to take place. Because we didn't do anything to save that 6-year-old girl's life, or that 15-year-old girl's life, or that family, or the tens of thousands of Palestinians that died. There's a reason why they hate us in the Middle East, and we've earned their hatred.
Yeah, I don't think it's for our freedoms, because let's face it, we ain't even had those anymore. If they hated us for our freedoms, they'd stop hating us because we've lost all of our freedom.
A long time ago.
I did want to ask you about, so now Netanyahu, after going and getting clobbered in the rubble, God only knows how many people have lost and injured there. Now he's saying he wants to attack the Rafah crossing, and he's going, here's what I read. We're going after Hezbollah. And then I read, the U.S. government says, strategically, probably not a good idea. You should reconsider. To me, it sounds like bluster. I don't see. I mean, let's face it. They lost a bunch of guys with small arms fire. I turn on every day. I go to Telegram and I watch a bunch of Israeli guys going by in an armored personnel carrier, and some guy sticks a friggin' RPG out the window. Boom! Bunch of snipers out the window. They're shooting, gunning down. I mean, I'm like, they ain't having a lot of success, so much so that they're withdrawing from the rubble. And now they're saying, well, that didn't work out very good. I got an idea. Let's go take on Hezbollah. Let's go to the Rafah crossing. Maybe we'll fight the Egyptian army. Who knows? Let's go for it. Your thoughts on the big talk from the Netanyahu people about who they're going to attack next, how they're going to expand this war?
Well, let's put it in the proper perspective. Netanyahu is a man who is desperate right now. He's been humiliated by Hamas, not only through October 7th and his failure as a leader on that day. He's the man responsible for having Israel exposed to the extent that allowed Hamas to carry out this attack. And then he's promised a response that will terminate Hamas politically and militarily. Hamas is winning the war on the ground. Scott, how do you say they win? You win by not losing. But the Israelis themselves are saying, we haven't defeated them. With all they've done here and the casualties they've taken, they've only taken out 20% of the tunnels. That implies they know what 100% is, and they don't know what 100% is. So I don't think they have a clue what kind of tunnels. All they know is the tunnels still exist, and these guys are popping up, and as you said, taking them out here, there, and everywhere. They're fighting for rubble, losing lives for destroyed buildings. And so they've realized this is a lost battle. But that means that Hamas has not only not been defeated, but still retains the capability to do an October 7th type event. So Netanyahu has lost this one. Well, he said that Hamas will be destroyed politically. No, Hamas has more relevance today politically than ever before. If there was an election today in the Palestinian area, every Palestinian would vote for Hamas. I mean, the Hamas would win the legislature and the presidency. Mahmoud Abbas, the current president of the Palestinian Authority, knows that, has conceded that fact. And so Hamas has been empowered by Netanyahu, not weakened by Netanyahu. Netanyahu tried to change Israeli basic law so that he could never be prosecuted for the corruption that he's carried out over the course of his political career. Corruption that, if he's found guilty, and he probably is guilty, he'll spend the rest of his life behind bars. He made an effort to rewrite the law so that he would be immune. That has failed. The Israeli Supreme Court said no. So now he knows that the moment he stops being prime minister, he will be arrested, put on trial, and found guilty. In addition to that, he's going to be put in front of this commission that's going to take a look at how October 7th and how he's behaved since then. So it's over. The only way that he avoids this is to continue being a wartime prime minister. And so he, right now, he's lost against Hamas in Gaza. The whole issue of the hostages is coming back to bite him, because apparently up to a third of the hostages have been killed by the Israelis by now. And people are just saying, you're murdering Israelis. It's turning out that, I mean, he has murdered thousands of Israelis, not just the soldiers, not just the hostages, but it turns out that the Hannibal Directive was in full force on October 7th and 8th, and that the vast majority of the Israelis butchered by Hamas were killed by the Israeli Defense Force. It's now come out that this is indeed the case. So this is a man who has no future except to be a war prime minister. So he's threatening different things. Let's talk about Rafah crossing. What will happen if he goes into Rafah crossing is that Egypt has said that the Camp David Accords are finished. The peace agreement that we had that's brought about stability and peace is done, which means we can go to war against you anytime we want. And by the way, we have more tanks than you do. We have more everything than you do. So if you want that war, we can do that. Israel has been operating under the notion that there'd never again be a large-scale ground combat against Egypt in the Middle East because they had the peace. They had the Camp David Accords. You go against Rafah crossing, that's over. Saudi Arabia, Israel's been operating under the premise that the United States is going to make everything good. And Saudi Arabia is going to come in and have relations and economic relations there. And the Saudis came out and said, no, we won't even talk about it until there's a Palestinian state, a free and independent Palestinian state. Netanyahu, of course, said there never will be one. So that means that as long as Netanyahu is prime minister, there won't be any economic outlet through Saudi Arabia. Hezbollah. He's making noise about Hezbollah. Hezbollah's fought Israel twice now, once to liberate southern Lebanon, once in 2006, and they beat Israel both times. Israel's under the impression that if they fight Hezbollah, it's going to be a battle on Lebanese territory as Israel pushes Hezbollah out of southern Lebanon to the Litani River. A, they tried that a couple times. It never worked. But B, Hezbollah is not stupid. They said, the last time we fought you in 2006, you blew the hell out of a bunch of villages because we let you come onto our territory and we fought you on our territory. We won, but the damage done was unreal. We're not going to do that again. If you want to fight again, we're taking the fight to you. The battle will be fought in northern Israel on Israeli territory, and we're going in for keeps. We're going to take it. We're taking northern Israel. We're driving to the Galilee, and they're going to do it. If there's a war with Hezbollah, Hezbollah will win, and Hezbollah will take northern Israel. Everybody knows this, except Netanyahu. But I just don't see the Israeli military saying, let's commit suicide. I mean, they went into Hamas, against Hamas, and they had the pistol, and they had one bullet in there, and click, click. Please tell us to stop. Okay, stop. Now they're saying, hey, time to go up to Hezbollah, but here, put 5 more bullets in there. But there's no empty chambers. That's right. Boom, you're dead. And the Israeli military knows that. So I just think this is a lot of bluster right now. This is Netanyahu trying to get as many concessions as he can get. And I think one of the concessions he's looking for is immunity.
Yeah.
I think he's waiting for the Israeli body politic to say, look, if the only thing keeping you in power and causing all this death and destruction is fear of prosecution, then we'll give you immunity. But that's immunity that it will have to come with exile. So now the question is, where does he go? Does he go to the United States? Where does Netanyahu live? Because he can't stay in Israel because there's going to be a commission. So even if he gets immunity from the corruption that he's done, he's not going to get immunity for the crimes he has committed since October 7th or in the lead up to October 7th. So that's the big problem, I think, right now is what to do with Netanyahu. Where's he going to end up? Because he's the key. Once you eliminate Netanyahu, the problem solves itself. Suddenly, more rational players will come to the table. There will be a ceasefire. And look, the Israelis don't have to sit there and say, we refuse to negotiate with Hamas, because that's stupid. Hamas exists. You haven't defeated them. You've empowered them. What Israel needs to say is, if we're going to talk with Hamas, we need to talk to the Hamas through a filter. That's reasonable, given the bad blood. And so what Israel should be doing is finding the appropriate filter through which they can talk. And you see that right now in Egypt. They have these non-contact meetings where Hamas and Israel go to Egypt. They're in the same hotel. They're just, Hamas is over here in this room, Israel's in this room. In the middle are the Egyptians, the Qataris, and they go talk to the Israelis, and then they go over and they talk to the Hamas, and then they go and they talk. And, through this shuttle diplomacy, hopefully something good will happen. This is what Israel should be talking about, working with Hamas through a filter. And then if there's a Palestinian state, how do you maintain that filter, at least for the interim, while you repair relations between Hamas and Israel? How do you, what does Israel need to do to make Hamas comfortable living in peace with Israel? And what does Hamas need to do to make Israel? This is called diplomacy. Netanyahu is incapable of any sort of diplomatic thinking. He's all about violence. He's all about, because that's the only way he stays relevant is fear, intimidation, war. I think everybody's tired of that right now. So I think his days are numbered.
You have time for one more question, Scott?
Yeah.
The significance in Ukraine, I think we're really seeing the world change, right? Everything we're talking about is these are just changing, the world changing, Tucker Carlson, et cetera, et cetera. The significance of what's going on in the Red Sea with the Houthis, Ansar Allah, Yemen, whatever you want to call them, I think cannot be understated for a couple of reasons. The history of colonial powers, right? Britannia ruled the seas. The Spanish Armada, I forgot the name of the big battle where the Spaniards on the seas defeated the British. You know, we could go on and on, right? Those people still remember the names of the people who commanded the ships and things like that. This was world changing, right? Because what was it about? It was about he who controls the international shipping lanes of commerce runs the whole game, right? And the US, I remember watching Hillary Clinton talking about China, and she was saying, oh, they want a blue water navy. They can go all over the world. They must be stopped. Why? Because we got a blue water navy that can go all over the world. And of course, we can choke off people and they can't get their oil and they can't get their stuff. Oh my gosh, that's how we run the world. And of course, we can certainly keep the Straits of Hormuz open. What little Yemen is showing is that a country who sits on a choke point, who is armed with proper missiles, I don't care who it is, can stop everybody in the world, right? If I'm Russia, if I'm China, if I'm Iran, I mean, I think Russia and China, you know, Iran, I look at Iran and I say, okay, they're the little of the trifecta there, as they would call the trifecta of evil, but they're the little guy. But when you look at their strategies, they're very powerful. If I'm Russia and China now, I'm kind of emulating Iran, saying, you know what? I'm going to arm my allies to the teeth. I'm going to help my allies out. I'm going to look at strategic choke points. Hey, here, 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 and here, where the Americans want to close. I got an ally there. I'm going to arm them with some nasty missiles. And I'm going to now say to the US, you can't shut that down. We can shut it down. I think that again, it also shows the power of your position, right? In where your country sits is very, very, very powerful. I think after this, Russia, China, et cetera, are going to be coming to Yemen and say, well, you know, we'd like to build some things there. We'd like to help you out. Perhaps we could do some military cooperation. I think a lot of people after this are going to be calling Yemen saying, how can we help you out? We would love for you to be our allies, probably even the United States, right? Everybody's going to ally. Your thoughts about this Yemen strategy, the brilliance of it, and how it changes that dynamic of controlling international points of international shipping and choke points, Scott?
Well, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. The fact is that the Houthi in Yemen are dictating international maritime commerce. They've had a meaningful impact on this. Israel, the port of Eilat, has no ships. The Suez Canal is losing hundreds of millions of dollars of income because nobody's paying the transit fees. Europe is, the price of goods now has gone up by, I forget what it is, 10, 12%, because they have to go around the Horn of Africa instead of through the Suez Canal. This is just the way it is. And if you do that to the Strait of Hormuz, then energy security is compromised. But it's not just that. You're right. I do think that suddenly the Houthi have made themselves. Yemen has made itself a place where people want to go do business, because they've shown that this is the cork that can stop the straits. But let's take a look at some other realities here. China and it's a 12-dash line or 9-dash line, the islands that they've fortified in the South China Sea. I don't know if people have woken up to the fact of what that means. It means that China can shut down all south-north maritime connectivity with Japan, Taiwan, South Korea, because everything goes right through there. And China just said, we own it. We can shut it down anytime we want. But it's not just that, because, we'll say we're going to fight a battle of the islands and all this stuff. Indonesia has suddenly become one of the most strategically relevant countries in the world. If I were the United States, I would literally invest $100 million in building embassies and connectivity. I'd be getting the Rotary Club. I'd be flooding it with tourists. I'd become Indonesia's best buddy. I'd be sitting there saying, what do you need? How can we help you? Let's do it, because Indonesia controls strategic waterways through which all traffic goes. And if they're not on your side, Indonesia can shut it down in a heartbeat. Click. And Indonesia is one of these nations that's being wooed by China and by Russia. You may very well see Indonesia becoming a member of BRICS in the near future. It's part of the global South. It's it's a Muslim nation that's been completely. I mean, Indonesia just sent a hospital ship through the Red Sea. By the way, they weren't attacked. They'll get up there to help, and the whole Muslim world saying, "Thank you, Indonesia. Thank you, Indonesia." There's a hospital on the ground in Gaza that's run by the Indonesians.
Got to add something else, Scott. You might not know. Indonesians now have brought a bunch of legal scholars to their capital, and they're going to go to the ICJ and go after Israel for the illegal occupation. I don't think they're going to be hosting new U.S. embassies anytime soon.
No,
they're gone.
Because we blew it. And so this means now that, one of the things the United States, we talked about Taiwan, and we said, we will strangle China's economy. If China wants to fight us in Taiwan, the battle's not going to just be there, but we will strangle China's economy. Well, China sort of made itself unstrangleable by having great relations with Russia. They're building new energy pipelines so we can shut down shipping, but the oil is going to come in no matter what. But the Chinese are like, two can play that game. While you're trying to strangle us, we're going to do one of these Aikido flip moves, and we're going to be strangling you, using your force and your momentum to kill yourself. They will shut down Strait of Hormuz through Iran, who they have good relations with. The Bab el-Mandeb will be shut down because Yemen's not on the side of America. Indonesia will shut down the Malacca Straits. And what you're going to find, then South China will prevent all commerce. Australia is this island. Hey, Australia. How's it going to feel when nothing arrives and you've got nothing? And you all start to deteriorate because you can't sustain it yourselves. Because that's what's going to happen. This is the reality. China is such a far-thinking nation. They have thought it out. They don't need to replicate the American Navy. They are building some blue water capacity, but their goal isn't to say we're going to project power. All their goal is to say we will use the economic strength that we have to destroy you. And America will destroy itself. And it's just, remember, we talked about in the Middle East about what America did by retaliating against the attack on Al-Tanf. What we did is we made our entire posture in the Middle East untenable. So we will have to leave. What we're doing right now in trying to intimidate nations, intimidate China, is making our global economic posture untenable. The navies that we had were designed just like, Rule Britannica. Britannica rules the waves. The idea was to control this commerce. Our navies can't control anything. We can't control anything. China controls everything. And this is why William Burns recently wrote an article in Foreign Policy magazine where he said, we're no longer the undisputed, global supreme power. And he said, China has matched us and surpassed us in many areas. And one of the areas China surpassed is control over the global economy, not just in terms of finances and stuff like that, but control of the lines of communication.
Thanks a lot, Scott Ritter. Everybody, don't forget, go to scottritterextra.com. That's scottritterextra.com. That's where you'll find all of Scott's good work. Additionally, there's options there for you to donate. Scott's got to travel. He's got to feed Maverick. Maverick's always running around looking like he wants to chew on a sock or something. So he's obviously hungry. You got to help Scott feed. You got to help Scott out. Also, you can find all of his stuff. Make sure you go to scottritterextra.com and share that on all your social media platforms so that other people online can see what's happening with Scott. Also, you can see everything scrolling across the bottom. Follow me at rockfin.com. Follow me at Rumble and stuff like that. Just in case they throw me off of YouTube, we got other options because that could happen. And there's options scrolling across the bottom: PayPal, Buy Me a Coffee, etc. If you can afford to donate, that's great. If not, just share this on all your social media platforms. Don't forget, smash the like button. And thanks a lot, everybody. We will return soon.